"This isn't happening," she muttered, but even as she said it, she knew it was. For 3 years, Karen had ruled her subdivision with an iron fist, issuing violations for minor infractions, threatening legal action for non-compliance, and building her entire identity around the power of her position. She'd never considered what would happen if that power was stripped away. As she walked toward the parking lot to call an Uber, Karen caught sight of herself in the marina office window. Her hair was disheveled, her makeup smeared, and her clothes wrinkled. She looked like exactly what she was, a middle-aged woman who'd overplayed her hand and lost everything. But as she stared at her reflection, something else flickered in her eyes. Not defeat, but calculation. Karen Mitchell hadn't become HOA president by accepting loss gracefully. She'd clawed her way to the top through careful manipulation, strategic alliances, and an encyclopedic knowledge of community regulations. If they wanted to play hardball, she'd show them what hardball really looked like. Her phone buzzed with the Uber notification, but Karen was already planning her next move. The board meeting was tomorrow night, which gave her 24 hours to prepare. 24 hours to gather her own evidence, call in her own favors, and remind everyone exactly why they'd elected her president in the first place. As her Uber arrived, and she climbed into the backseat, Karen allowed herself a small, dangerous smile. They thought they'd won, but the game was far from over. She'd built her empire once, and she'd do it again. The driver glanced in the rearview mirror. "Rough day." "Just getting started," Karen replied, her voice steady for the first time all day. But as they drove past the marina, she couldn't shake the feeling that Marcus Rodriguez's security cameras had captured more than just her boat in the wrong slip. They'd captured the beginning of the end of the only life she'd ever known. And somewhere in the back of her mind, a small voice whispered that maybe, just maybe, she deserved exactly what was coming to her. Karen's phone clattered to the dock as she sprinted toward the parking lot, her boat shoes slipping on the wet planks. Behind her, Janet calmly picked up the still-connected phone and spoke to the dispatcher. "This is Janet Walsh, marina manager. The trespasser has abandoned her call. We're handling this through proper channels." Bob, the tow truck driver, was already positioning his truck behind the BMW when Karen arrived, breathless and wild-eyed. The sight of the hook being lowered toward her precious car, her symbol of suburban success and HOA authority, triggered something primal in Karen's carefully constructed psyche. "Stop! You can't do this. I'll sue everyone," she gasped, placing herself between the truck and her car like a mother protecting her child. Bob, who'd seen this dance 1,000 times, simply gestured toward the marina office. "Lady, take it up with management. I've got a legal tow order." "I am management," Karen shrieked. "I'm the HOA president." "And I'm the King of England," Bob replied dryly, continuing his work. "Move aside, Your Majesty." Karen's face cycled through several shades of red before settling on a deep crimson that matched her nail polish. She pulled out her backup weapon, her HOA badge, which she'd had laminated and attached to a lanyard for maximum authority projection. "This is my official identification," she announced, thrusting the badge toward Bob. "I have jurisdiction here." Bob squinted at the badge, which featured Karen's photo and the words HOA President, Willowbrook Community, in Comic Sans font. "That's nice, lady. You got jurisdiction over this truck too." The question hung in the air as Karen realized the fundamental flaw in her logic. Her HOA presidency, the source of all her power and identity, meant absolutely nothing outside the boundaries of her subdivision. She was just another angry customer in a parking lot, watching her car get hooked up to a tow truck. "This is a mistake," she said, her voice suddenly smaller. "I just need to move my boat. Give me 5 minutes." But it was too late. Bob had already secured the BMW and was climbing back into his truck. "You can pick it up at the impound lot. Cash only." As Karen watched her car disappear down Harbor Drive, she felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Genuine powerlessness. The feeling was so foreign that she didn't immediately recognize it. For a moment, she just stood there, swaying slightly, as the reality of her situation sank in. Back at the dock, her boat was still illegally parked in Marcus's slip, Her phone was still lying on the planks where she'd dropped it, and Janet was still waiting with that patient, professional smile that Karen was beginning to hate with the fury of 1,000 suns. "Ready to move your boat now, Mrs. Mitchell," Janet called out. Karen's humiliation transformed back into rage with frightening speed. "You people have no idea what you've done," she snarled, marching back toward the dock. "I have connections. I have influence. I will make sure this marina regrets this day." "I'm sure you will," Janet replied calmly. "But right now, you need to move your boat, or I'll have to call the Coast Guard about the unauthorized vessel in slip 23. "The Coast Guard?" Karen's voice cracked. "You can't call the Coast Guard over a boat slip. Try me." For the first time in her adult life, Karen Mitchell found herself completely outmaneuvered. Every threat she'd made had been met with a calm, professional response. Every assertion of authority had been dismissed with facts and legal backing. She was discovering what it felt like to be on the receiving end of bureaucratic power, and the experience was both terrifying and infuriating. "Fine," she said through gritted teeth. "I'll move the boat, but this isn't over." "I'm sure it isn't," Janet agreed, watching as Karen stomped toward her boat with the dignity of a toddler having a meltdown in a grocery store. Karen's sense of righteous indignation reached nuclear levels when Janet remained unmoved by her credentials. Standing up so quickly that her deck chair nearly toppled into the water, Karen pulled out her phone with the dramatic flair of a gunslinger drawing their weapon. "I'm calling the police," she declared, her fingers already dialing 911. "This is harassment of an elected official." Janet exchanged glances with her dock workers, Tom and Steve, who had seen their share of entitled boat owners, but never quite at this level. Tom was already reaching for his radio to call for backup, not the police kind, but the kind that involved the marina's towing contract. 911. "What's your emergency?" The dispatcher's voice crackled through Karen's phone. "Yes, hello. I need officers sent to Sunset Harbor Marina immediately. I'm being harassed and threatened by marina employees who are trying to force me off my property." "Ma'am, can you clarify the nature of the threats?" Karen's eyes lit up with vindication. Finally, someone who understood the gravity of the situation. "They're trying to force me to move my boat from a slip that I have every right to occupy. This is clearly a case of discrimination against HOA officials. I've been president for 3 years, and I've never experienced such blatant disrespect for authority." While Karen continued her increasingly dramatic account to the 911 operator, Janet was making calls of her own. First to Marcus Rodriguez, then to the marina's legal counsel, and finally to Ace Towing, the company that had an exclusive contract for marina property. "Bob, it's Janet at Sunset Harbor. I need a car towed from our lot. Silver BMW, license plate." She squinted at Karen's car through the marina office window. HOAPREZ. "Yeah, that's really her plate." Karen, still on the phone with 911, was now pacing the narrow dock with theatrical gestures. "The marina manager is actively ignoring my authority and engaging in what I can only describe as a conspiracy to undermine elected leadership in this community." "Ma'am," the dispatcher interrupted, "have you been asked to leave the property?" "Well, yes, but..." "And do you have permission to be in that particular boat slip?" Karen's pacing stopped. "I don't need permission. I'm the HOA president. This is community property." "Ma'am, I'm showing that Sunset Harbor Marina is privately owned. If you don't have permission to be there and you've been asked to leave, you're trespassing." The word trespassing hit Karen like a physical blow. In her 3 years as HOA president, she'd never been on the wrong side of a property dispute. She was the one who issued violations, who determined what was and wasn't allowed, who held the power of community standards in her perfectly manicured hands. "That's impossible," she sputtered. "I've been coming here for years. I have a boat slip here." "Yes, ma'am, but not that particular slip. I'm going to need you to move your boat to your assigned location." Behind Karen, she could hear the rumble of a diesel engine. Turning around, she saw a massive tow truck pulling into the marina parking lot, its yellow lights flashing like a beacon of doom. "What's that truck doing here?" she demanded, pointing at Janet. Janet's smile was now openly satisfied. That would be for your BMW. Since you're trespassing on marina property and refusing to leave, we're having your vehicle removed. You see and do that? Karen shrieked, her composure finally cracking completely. I'm on the phone with 911. Ma'am, please lower your voice, the dispatcher said. Are you in immediate physical danger? They're stealing my car. Is this a legally parked vehicle? Karen's mouth opened and closed like a fish. The BMW was parked in the marina's customer lot, but she wasn't currently a customer in good standing. She was, as the dispatcher had pointed out, trespassing. The tow truck driver, a weathered man named Bob, who'd been dealing with difficult customers for 30 years, approached with his clipboard and a knowing smile. He'd towed plenty of cars from the marina, but never one with a license plate quite so perfectly ironic. Silver BMW, plate HOAPREZ. He called out cheerfully. Don't you dare touch my car. Karen screamed, abandoning her phone call entirely and charging toward the parking lot. Moving the privilege from slip 23 to slip 47 should have been a simple 5-minute operation, but Karen's hands were shaking with rage, her depth perception was compromised by tears of frustration, and her usual boat handling skills had been replaced by pure, undiluted fury. The first sign of trouble came when she misjudged the turn into her assigned slip and scraped the port side of her boat against the dock piling. The sound of fiberglass grinding against wood made everyone within earshot wince, but Karen was too focused on her humiliation to notice the damage. Careful there, Mrs. Mitchell, Tom, one of the dock workers called out. Want me to help you, Doc? I don't need help from anyone. Karen snapped, overcorrecting and nearly ramming into the boat in the adjacent slip. It took her 3 attempts to properly dock the privilege, and by the time she'd finished, a small crowd had gathered to watch the spectacle. Karen's face burned with embarrassment as she realized she'd become the entertainment for the day. But her ordeal wasn't over. As she climbed out of her boat, her phone, which she'd retrieved from the dock, buzzed with a text from Marcus Rodriguez. Got your boat on camera. Sending video to my lawyer and the HOA board. Time for a new president. Karen stared at the message, her blood running cold. The HOA board. She'd been so focused on asserting her authority that she'd forgotten about the people who actually held power over her position. The 5-member board who could call for a vote of no confidence. The same board that had been receiving increasing complaints about her heavy-handed tactics. No, she whispered, then louder, no, no, no. Janet approached with a clipboard and a sympathetic expression that Karen knew was fake. Mrs. Mitchell, I need you to fill out an incident report about the dock damage. What dock damage? Karen asked, though she could clearly see the fresh gouges in the piling where her boat had scraped. The damage to dock infrastructure caused by your boat during the unauthorized docking procedure, Janet explained patiently. It's standard procedure. Karen stared at the clipboard as if it were a venomous snake. Another form. Another official record of her failure. Another piece of evidence that could be used against her. I'm not signing anything, she declared, but her voice lacked its usual conviction. That's your right, Janet agreed. But the marina will still need to file a report with our insurance company. And of course, we'll need to provide the security footage to support our claim. Security footage? Karen's voice was barely a whisper. Oh yes, we have cameras throughout the marina. Very clear footage of the entire incident, including your boat in the wrong slip, your refusal to move when asked, and the docking damage. Janet's smile was now openly triumphant. I'm sure it will be very educational for anyone who views it. Karen's phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from Betty Kowalski, her vice president. Emergency board meeting called for tomorrow night. Several residents have filed complaints. Please be prepared to address concerns about your conduct. The world seemed to tilt sideways. Karen gripped the dock railing to steady herself as the full scope of her situation became clear. Her car was impounded. Her boat was damaged. Her authority had been publicly demolished. And now her position as HOA president was in jeopardy. The sound of Karen Mitchell's cell phone hitting the marina dock with a satisfying crack echoed across the water as she watched her pristine white BMW disappear around the corner on the back of a tow truck. Her face, already flushed from screaming at the 911 operator for 20 minutes, now turned an alarming shade of purple. "This is ALAGAL," she shrieked at the retreating truck, her voice carrying across the entire Sunset Harbor Marina. "I'm the HOA president. I have RIGHTS." The irony wasn't lost on the small crowd of boaters who had gathered to witness what would later be known as the Great Karen Meltdown of 2024. Just 30 minutes earlier, Karen had been the one threatening to have vehicles towed. It all started when Karen decided her 28-foot cabin cruiser, the Privilege, needed a better slip than the one she'd been assigned. Slip 47 was perfectly adequate, but slip 23, the one belonging to Marcus Rodriguez, had better lighting and closer proximity to the clubhouse. Marcus was out of town for 2 weeks, so Karen figured she'd simply relocate. "It's temporary," she told herself while maneuvering her boat into Marcus's slip. "And technically, as AHOA president, I have authority over all community amenities." The Sunset Harbor Marina wasn't actually part of the Willowbrook HOA that Karen presided over with an iron fist, but she'd convinced herself that her presidential powers extended to all recreational facilities used by her residents. This delusion had served her well in the past. She'd successfully banned 3 different food trucks from the nearby park and had gotten a traffic light installed at her personal convenience. But Marcus Rodriguez wasn't just any resident. He was a retired police sergeant who'd specifically chosen Slip 23 for its security features and had installed a discreet camera system after his previous boat had been vandalized. When his phone buzzed with motion alerts while he was visiting his daughter in Phoenix, he initially assumed it was just seagulls or wind. Then he saw Karen's boat in his slip. "Oh hell no," Marcus muttered, immediately dialing the marina office. Meanwhile, Karen was busy setting up her deck chairs and cooler, completely oblivious to the camera recording her every move. She'd even brought her HOA clipboard, planning to use this prime location for her weekly community oversight session. Essentially Karen sitting in a chair, drinking wine, and taking notes about her neighbor's infractions. Her peaceful afternoon was interrupted by the arrival of Janet Walsh, the marina manager, along with 2 dock workers. "Mrs. Mitchell," Janet called out, her voice professionally pleasant but firm. "I need you to move your boat back to your assigned slip." Karen looked up from her clipboard, her reading glasses perched on her nose, and fixed Janet with a withering stare that had made countless HOA residents quake in their driveways. "I'm conducting official HOA business," Karen announced, not bothering to stand. "This is community property, and I have every right to be here." Janet's smile tightened. "Actually, Mrs. Mitchell, this is private property. The marina operates independently of any HOA, and this slip is leased to Marcus Rodriguez. You're trespassing." "Trespassing?" Karen's voice rose an octave. "Do you know who I am? I'm the president of the Willowbrook HOA. I've been featured in the community newsletter 6 times this year alone."